Welcome back to Square Off. Arizona is being closely watched nationwide as the next litmus test for the Trump effect. Will Donald Trump's endorsements catapult Republican candidates for governor, senator, and secretary of state to victory in their party primaries? Our political insiders joining us now to break down the top primaries as early ballots arrive in voters' mailboxes. Christine Jones is a former Republican candidate for governor and former top executive at GoDaddy.com. Chad Campbell is co-founder of the consulting firm Lumen Strategies and a former Democratic leader in the Arizona House of Representatives. Welcome back to Square Off.
Good morning.
Thank you.
First, my usual question, any conflicts of interest, any people you're working for in the races we're about to discuss?
Nope.
Not in this cycle.
All right, good. Glad we got that settled. Let's start with the Trump effect. I want to read some numbers to you. According to OH Predictive, here are likely Republican voters' favorability ratings for three people, 2 on the ballot, 1 off the ballot. Donald Trump is plus 64% among Republican voters. That means he has 81% view him favorably, just 17% view him unfavorably. Kari Lake is plus 30, 58 favorable, 28 unfavorable. Karrin Taylor Robson, her opponent in the governor's race, also plus 30, 52 favorable, 22 unfavorable. Christine Jones, what do those numbers tell you about Trump's hold on the party and the value of his endorsement?
Well, there clearly is still a Trump effect happening, and he has endorsed Kari early, and obviously that has carried her through a lot of this race. But it really seems like it's going to come down, and I think you made this observation after the debate, Bram. It really seems like it comes down to Trump versus Ducey 2.0, right? This is going to be Trump versus Ducey again, because the Trump effect versus the Ducey effect is something that we haven't explored, and we're going to have to see how that carries. And your earlier guest talked about this a little bit. I think you cannot underestimate the power of the loyalty of the Trump supporters.
And I'll add that Doug Ducey's favorability ratings in another survey were about plus 40. He actually did pretty well, fared pretty well in that. Will Trump, though, come back to haunt Republican candidates in a general election if they make it that far?
Yeah, I think so. I think you saw the effect in the debate, the GOP debate last week. They didn't discuss issues for the most part. They hurled insults at one another. None of them could really say that the election was fair. Even Karrin Taylor Robson had to say that it wasn't fair. She couldn't say that it was stolen, but she couldn't go down the road that I think most Arizonans believe. So I think that Trump endorsement is going to hang over whoever the nominee is in that general. And I think to Christine's point, the Ducey endorsement does kind of tee up the traditional Republican establishment against that new Trump base. But I'm not sure the Republican establishment has enough momentum at this point. I think the Trump base is going to carry those candidates through the primary, and then it's going to set up for a very interesting general election, though, to your point.
I've got to say, just looking nationally, my sense is that Arizona may be the Trumpiest state to date when it comes to the primaries, just up and down the ballot. You look at the major races, governor, attorney general, secretary of state, U.S. Senate. And let's talk about that. U.S. Senate, Blake Masters, it seems, clearly got a lift from his Trump endorsement.
For sure. I mean, this race was Mark Brnovich's race to lose, and he has been the biggest disappointment in this cycle, right? For Blake Masters to escalate that high, that quickly with a single endorsement, powerful one, admittedly,
yeah,
really says a lot about both the Trump effect and the inability of Brnovich to really close the deal.
I want to go back to the governor's race for a second. We haven't spoken or discussed Matt Salmon dropping out and his impact on the race. What's your take on that? His voters went where?
I think they're going to split about 50-50. I said this right when he announced. I think it's holding true based on numbers I'm seeing. And the problem for Matt was he tried to be somebody he wasn't out of the gate. He tried to come out as this MAGA candidate, which anybody who knows Matt knows that isn't him. But the voters that didn't know him saw that. They thought he was a MAGA candidate. So when he's going to drop out of that race, they're going to go to Kari. And his traditional base voters that do know him are probably going to go to Karrin. So it's going to be a 50-50 split at the end of the day. I don't think his withdrawal, or Ducey's endorsement of Karrin Taylor Robson, I think it had no impact on this race. Nobody moved the needle with those endorsements or those withdrawals.
And we should add, Matt Salmon's name is still going to be on the ballot, which could confuse a lot of voters. And is this coming down to be a really close race on election night?
Yeah, I think so. And a little inside baseball, conservatives that I talked to have said something similar to what you said, Chad, which is we don't really trust Ducey, so we cannot vote for Robson. And that has nothing to do with Robson as a person. That just has to do with the power of Doug's endorsement as an anti-positive. Now, what I think happens here, because I think Salmon still probably gets 20 to 25,000 votes, somewhere around there. I think unlike most Republican primaries where it's decided the first day of early ballots, it probably comes down to election day. So it could be really interesting to watch this thing all the way through August. And, you know, we may not even know on election night who won this race.
And Mark Fincham, Trump candidate for Secretary of State, says he will challenge the results if he loses.
Of course.
That will go on. I want to end with the Democratic primary for governor. We just saw Marco Lopez here. He's now found Talonia Adams, whose case has been out there for a while, and he's kind of hanging on to her. Does that give his campaign, Chad, any traction at all?
No. This issue's already been vetted and discussed at length amongst the Democratic base. I think we all remember it earlier in the summer, or I guess it was spring probably. Democratic voters know all about this. They've already decided that they trust Katie Hobbs. I think the polling shows that. More power to Marco for running. I'm glad we have multiple candidates in the race. But at the end of the day, I cannot see a scenario where Katie Hobbs does not run away with this primary.
But Christine, has the RGA, Republican Governors Association, already prepared the ad with Talonia Adams in it?
Yeah, I think that ad writes itself. And she's so good to the camera and so credible, right? As a lawyer, she argued her own case and she won twice. I think those ads are probably already in the can. Doesn't matter who the Republican candidate is. That's just going to be, as Marco always likes to say, you simply cannot have a governor candidate who has been proven as a racist. That just doesn't work today for Republicans or Democrats.
I don't think anybody's going to believe that argument on the Democratic side. And if you compare Katie Hobbs to the extremist Republican candidates, especially Kari Lake, the Democrats are going to stay with Katie, and the independents are going to come to Katie.
All right, we'll wait and see. Christine Jones, Chad Campbell, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.